Welcome to Mindful Sex 2026 with pleasure coach Andrea Bertoli and my brilliant, beautiful, beloved sex therapist husband, Christopher.
Hey, hey.
We are bringing you our first workshop of 2026. And this workshop today was really fun to put together because we sat down and brainstormed, and as we put it together, we realized like this is not only kind of what we're going to be talking about for the rest of the year in our mindful sex workshops, but it also is kind of a very broad introduction to this work. So if you have never dipped your toe into the world of sacred sexuality and pleasure education, things like that, this will be a nice overview. If you are well versed in this world, then you might pick up a few new things along the way. All right, hold on one second. Okay, great. So, again, for anybody who's just joining us for the first time, you can drop your questions into the chat and we will have space for Q&A at the end. We do not record the Q&A, so you're welcome to come video on for that. So to get us started, I want to introduce me because again, a lot of people are brand new here. Actually, I want to start with introducing Mindful Sex. So, Mindful Sex is a series of workshops that Christopher and I have been doing for over 2 years now. And it started out as my project, and then Christopher started helping, and then Christopher very easily slid into co hosting because, as you'll hear, he is a brilliant therapist and coach and speaker. And so he's going to be adding his wisdom along the way. I started offering these as a way to build my community. I was living in Hawaii for the past 25 years. And as I started doing this work, I knew that I would need to reach people all around the continent and all around the world. So this is a way for me to get to meet new people. You do sign over your email, and I will drop you onto my newsletter. You'll get a few newsletters from me. You can opt out if you want. And this is a way for us just to have these fun conversations for free. It's an entry level conversation. It's kind of like top of funnel in marketing terms, where we get to speak to a lot of different people about a lot of different things. And you can find your particular pathway in working with us. We are going to be teaching again next month, and it happens to be on Valentine's Day. I'm going to drop those links below. I have them on two different platforms for lots of different reasons. If you're an Eventbrite person, great, you can register there. If you've already used Conscious City, great, you can register there. They're the same. All right. So, my work as a pleasure coach and a sex educator combines holistic practices and science-backed research. So, you can imagine my work and my practices as a Venn diagram of esoteric and magical, and also scientific and practical. I very much approach this work as a healing practice, both in my own mind, body, spirit, but in my relationship and also as I guide clients and students. Sex is often left out of therapy, it's left out of wellness spaces, it's left out of self help. And we are here to bring sex and sexuality and pleasure into the conversation about healing, growth, all that good stuff. I work as a coach for individuals, especially for those in perimenopause and those that love them. And I work with couples as well in session and in workshops, classes, and online spaces like this. I have an online pleasure education platform that is $5 to $15 a month. I'll drop links in a minute over on Patreon. So you can find me there for more workshops like this. For any bisexual women in the audience, I'm also an ambassador for Skirt Club. So if you want to come hang out with us in San Francisco or in our cities around the world, come join us. I teach for them also. And I'll drop in a few links to my Instagram and my Patreon, and you can check that out. But now I'm going to hand it over to my beloved so that he can introduce himself.
Hey, y'all. As Andrea mentioned, our partnership has taken on a couple of new formal pieces since we saw you last. First of all, we got married in Hawaii, and at least one person in the audience was there, which was super cool. And then we are also members of a group practice. And so we are formalizing our professional relationship as well. So this is season 3 of the Mindful Sex workshops, and I'm happy to be a participant. This is also the entry level of our access ladder at Sapient. That's the name of our group practice. So this is the free offering. Not everybody can afford, fee for service coaching or fee for service therapy. So this is how we're going to approach our group practice. We're going to have offerings at a variety of price points so people can get at least limited information and specific suggestions. But if you need custom bespoke coaching or custom bespoke therapy, that's going to be at the top of that access ladder. So those are some of the updates from here in Berkeley, California, where Andrea and I are becoming more and more connected and more individuated. We'll talk about that throughout this program too, because that's kind of a nod for what you're going to need to be really sexually sophisticated. For my end, just to give you my bio, I am a psychotherapist for over 23 years, a sex therapist as well. So licensed clinical social worker, licensed in California, Colorado, Texas, also ASECT certified as a sex therapist. I specialize in working with ethical non-monogamy and unethical non-monogamy, meaning I do a lot of work with infidelity, infidelity reckoning, and recovery. So those are my specialties, but I can do a wide variety of stuff as most therapists can because we get trained in a bunch of things all the way along from diagnosing to treating mental illnesses and sexual disorders. So I've seen a lot, but certainly haven't seen it all. But that's kind of me in a nutshell, and that's what's going on with us. And Andrea, back to you.
Awesome. Thank you, darling. All right. So today's conversation around sexual sophistication quite literally came to us on our honeymoon. And we were talking about all of the different things that we have learned and all the different things that we know, the things that we've put together in our own lives, in our sex life, in our practice. And this idea of sexual sophistication seemed like it really covered a lot of things about who we are, who we want to be, how we want to continue to learn, what we want to teach our people, and also what we might be interested in other people. Thinking about sexuality in a sophisticated way. And Christopher, you had said this initially was like, you can be emotionally sophisticated, you can be kind of intellectually sophisticated. And I think sexual sophistication is a really nice add on for that. So, in today's workshop, we are going to talk about this framework that we created and co created on our honeymoon. We'll talk about what it is, how it will guide you into being a more elevated and more masterful lover for yourself and for others. And we'll share a ton of resources along the way. And when you're done, you'll have some wisdom and practices that will help light your path and your personal flavor of sexual sophistication, including a bunch of different resources on my Patreon and elsewhere that you can look at. As a gentle reminder, this is not a substitute for therapy or coaching. Please take care of yourself today. If it feels like too much information, you're welcome to drop off. If it feels overstimulating, you're welcome to mute us for a little bit. It's going to be recorded. I'm going to send it to you in an email. So if you want to take little bits at a time, that is okay. We are both, as a coach and as a therapist, we both help people through all this stuff, but this is not a substitute for individualized coaching. Okay. Anything you want to add to that, my love?
No, I think, well, yes, I guess. I did the thing that we were just talking about this yesterday about, things. There's kind of a trend going on now about, this is therapy, that is therapy, running is therapy, my friendship is therapy. And I kind of bristle at that because I'm a therapist. And I think, no, therapy is therapy. But there are lots of things that can be therapeutic. Right. And so the idea of today is to, like we mentioned before, give you some limited information, maybe some specific suggestions in the Q&A, but there are higher levels of customization to what you're going through and the kind of assistance we can give to what you're going through. And that sort of customization, I think, is maybe a good place to start for y'all, the audience, is, we're going to give you this information. We're good generalists, very good generalists, but you're the specific ones that know you and your partners. So, your work as the audience is to take these concepts and say, okay, which of these apply to me and to my partnerships and my sexual relationships and how? So, right, so our job is to present you the general information. Your job is to make it bespoke and custom to you.
Yeah, great. You always have something to add, which is why I always
Yeah,
like to
but
listen to you
the fact that
after.
I said no, belies my joy of hearing my own voice.
Okay, so as a quick overview, the four pillars of sexual sophistication as we imagine them. Embodied consent. We're going to talk about all the different ways to understand consent and practice consent, that it goes way, way beyond a simple yes or no. The second pillar of sexual sophistication is co-creation. That is, one or two or more people are coming together to create something. We are not here just to create friction and have an orgasm, unless that's what you agree to create. What if you wanted to create and co create different types of experiences that are healing, that are cathartic, that are wild, that are all the different ways that you can experience sex and sexuality? So, we're going to talk about why co creation is such an important factor of being sexually sophisticated. Our third pillar of sexual sophistication that we'll talk about is mindful presence. Our overarching subject on these workshops is always mindful sex, and we'll talk about presence, power, attunement, embodiment, and understanding, this kind of learning curve of when we learn something new, like many of you will today. Hopefully, you all will learn something new today. How to put that into action. Our fourth pillar of sexual sophistication is sexual tools. And so often when we read articles or watch documentaries or listen to podcasts or read books about like how to fix your sex life, so often it falls in this category where it's tools, it's things, it's practices that you have to throw at your sex life or at your masturbation practice or at your relationship to like make it work better. But we put this at the bottom because sexual tools are absolutely a part of sexual sophistication. And we're going to talk about a range of both physical and practical, like physical tools, things that you practice, things that you learn, different breathing techniques, things like that, that are tools. But there's so much other stuff to talk about that it's not more important, but it's equally as important as the tools that you bring. So, oh, I just saw the squirt conversation in the chat. Okay, great. I'm sure there's a squirt club somewhere.
I
I
think
don't
we've
know what
got
it
charter
is.
members in this group if they wanted to join.
Yeah. So, okay, squirt club. I'm sure it's a thing. I don't
I
Google
thought
it
it
though.
was just interesting that when I saw that, and then it's like, oh, that is not how I heard. I heard this one. That was sharing.
It's great. I love
But
it.
it was beautiful
Squirt
how Chris
club.
you introduced and you shared your new journey. So congratulations, both of you.
Thank
That's
you.
Thank
beautiful,
you.
Thank you very much.
beautiful.
All right. So we start with our first pillar of sexual sophistication, which is embodied consent. Consent in common parlance, common conversation is often like, is it enthusiastic? Hell yes. Or is it a no? That's important. And there is so, so, so much more when it comes to consent. And one of the concepts I want to introduce today is something called self consent. And this is really being present with your physical body and what your physical body wants and needs in any given moment. So often we think about consent as like, well, what do they want? What do I want? Maybe we can come to an agreement. Or like, did they ask and did I say yes? Okay, great. But again, like, if you start with you, what do you really want? And I went to this workshop a few weeks ago that was a body work workshop. I'm not a body worker, but it was a cool class and I wanted to practice it. So one of the things that they said was they were all bodywork practitioners. And they talked about, if your client's animal body responds with like this kind of motion, like a pull away or like a squint or like obvious discomfort, like even if they say it's okay, like trust the animal body that is rejecting whatever that touch is or whatever that tool is, right? And so I want you just to close your eyes, assuming you're not driving. Close your eyes for a moment and feel into just your breath. And then, if you can feel into your heartbeat, And just like all other animals, we get to learn to trust the slowness of our breath, the steadiness of our heartbeat, and the truth of what our animal body wants. And that phrase has stuck with me, and I want it to stick with you kind of throughout all of what we're going to talk about today. Because if you say yes to a touch that you then kind of pull away from, but then go back into, like trust that initial pull away. If you touch something and it doesn't feel good, like adjust yourself. If you're sitting in a way that feels a little bit uncomfortable, move. If you have to pee, go pee as soon as you feel that sensation, right? Like trust the animal instincts in your body. This is especially important, I think, as a woman who's dated mostly men. I think it's really important for women to practice this, although it is absolutely important for men to practice this as well, especially when it comes to penetration. Even if you are penetrating yourself, if you are masturbating and using sex toys or using your fingers, really ask yourself, do I want to be penetrated? Really ask yourself, do I want something inside me? Or is it just kind of this next step in the process? You can even slow down further and talk to your pussy. What do you want? What do you want to feel? Right? And when we start to approach sex and pleasure through the lens of this self consent, through the lens of this animal body, it's going to change what feels good. If you have a partner and you start to bring this into your partnership, it may create some static at first because if you start suddenly advocating for things that used to feel good or you used to acquiesce to, which we'll talk about in a minute, it might create some static. But just being with yourself is one of the most important things you can do as a sexual partner. So, the other thing I want to say about that is really getting clear about what you want. So many of us, especially men, but not exclusively men, definitely women and other folks too, have learned to bind up all of our human needs, which we'll talk about in a minute, into sex. We get intimacy from sex. We get closeness from sex. We get touch from sex. We get, being seen, heard, validated through sex. And that's fine. But when that's your only outlet into feeling your emotions or getting and giving and receiving touch, then the partner, whoever you get to have sex with, is going to feel that. And it's not going to be about, I want to connect with this person or I want to feel your body. It's really like, I have a need. I don't know how to express my need for touch or closeness or emotional closeness. So I'm going to ask for sex, even though it may not fulfill that actual need, right? So many of us ask for sex when we really need something else. And that's really, really important to understand. Um, this is like, I'm just going to end it there. Christopher, do you want to add anything?
Yeah, the part you said about talking to your pussy brought up a couple of things for me. I was in my own sex therapy, I guess a couple of years ago, and I was relaying a story that had happened with another lover that Andrea and I had met. And my sex therapist just reflected back to me. She said, "Wow, you really had some penis wisdom there." And it was kind of what Andrea is talking about for women. It exists for penis owners too, right? That sometimes you can pay attention to how your body is responding, and that's telling you something you might not yet be aware of. This starts to bring in the psychotherapeutic concept of the unconscious. Sometimes the body knows before the mind knows, right? So, I mean, we could probably just leave that with y'all to think about it. Like, when are times where my body has known something before my mind knew it? Okay. So maybe you've each got an idea of your own life. Remember, your job is to customize what we're giving you. And this is also an introduction into something we would call therapeutically parts work. That a part of me is aware of something before all of me is aware. or there's a part of me that's reacting that I carry with me that maybe not all of me agrees with me. So I'm in conflict in myself. So when Andrea talks about self-consent, this is what we're talking about. I went to an event in Austin, the Austin Tantra Festival. We did the opening circles. And this woman said, well, my goal for this year is to really be sure I don't do anything I don't want to do. Because last year I consented to something, and then when I woke up the next day, I wished I hadn't done it. And she didn't blame anybody else. She really owned it. It was really this kind of, really courageous share to us, at least one stranger in the circle, me. But she was really talking about this concept of self-consent. I really want to be aware of what I want and what I don't. And I want to act from that place during this event. And I thought that was a sterling example of what Andrea's talking about with self-consent. So again, when you're talking about solo sex or partnered sex, you're in it, so starting with you sometimes isn't a habit that we're all accustomed to in an intentional, mindful way.
One of the things I love about co-hosting with you is that I say things like the animal body, and you say it in therapeutic language, which is sometimes the body knows before the brain knows. And I
Mhm.
think that that balance is really helpful for me, and I'm sure really helpful for other people as well. So thank you.
You got
So
it.
the next part of this embodied consent is a brief conversation about boundaries and edges. This is obviously, it could be its own workshop. I feel like actually each of the points in today's workshop could be their own workshop. And so again, please think of this as an overview. But as we think about boundaries, this is different than when you hear your therapist talk about like setting boundaries with your parents or with that annoying cousin or with your coworkers. This is different. Boundaries in sex really function as a hard no for your play. It might be forever, it might be temporary, it might be just for this scene or just for this day or just for this week, but they are not up for negotiation in the moment. This is a hard no. I will not do X activity. I will not subject myself to X sort of sensation today, whatever it might be. Edges are a little bit different. Edges are where you can still play kind of on the edge of your boundaries while still being in your window of tolerance. And one of the quickest ways to check, I get back to the self consent, is can you still breathe? Oftentimes, when we're in a sexual situation, especially, there's a lot of heightened energy. We may cross a boundary, as Christopher was just mentioning in that example, and kind of not know it. One of the ways you may notice that you've crossed a boundary, if that happens, is you lose that kind of embodiment. You lose your breath. You lose your kind of sense of place in the moment. When you are playing healthfully with your edges, you can stay in that window of tolerance of, we've agreed to this. I understand how much time we have. I understand he's not going to cross my boundary. And I understand that this is new and different, but I can still breathe. And my partner's going to check in with me, and I'm going to check in with me. And we're going to play these edges. Boundaries and edges are important to have because they feed into this understanding of self consent. But also, when you are self consenting, when you are understanding what you want, you can share that with your partners. Because the least sexy thing somebody can say when asked, what do you like? What are you into? I don't know, whatever you want. No, I'm not going to have sex with that person because I don't trust them to listen to their body. I don't trust them that they know what they want, and I don't know that they know what their boundaries are. And so they are not going to be able to tell me where their boundaries and edges are, and I'm going to cross something perhaps. And that doesn't feel safe for me. So understanding the self-consent, understanding your boundaries and edges, that is one of the things that can make you more open, more mindful, more embodied in your sexual play. Because what happens if we don't do that is we create a bunch of tolerations. And I learned tolerations. I'm so happy she's here today. I learned this from my dear friend Tara Ann, who's a fabulous life and leadership coach based in Hawaii. And she asked, what are you tolerating in your life right now? And it was one of the best questions I've ever been asked. So I'm going to hand it over to Christopher to talk about tolerations.
Yeah, so tolerations, if, from my point of view, in a sexual context, will be things that I can endure, things that I can put up with, things that I feel like I gotta do to keep the other person happy or to keep them regulated, right? So I'm really having sex, trying to kind of people please and manage my partner, right? So self-consent is out the window. Like what I'm interested in. So to give a riff off what my personal riff off what Andrea is saying about edges and boundaries, I can know if I know myself, hey, this is an area of sexuality that I want to expand in, that I want to learn more about, that I want to try more of. There's an edge for me. This is a growth area, right? This is a part of sex either today or in general that I just don't want to play with at all. This is a no, right? So here are my no's, here are my edges, here are my wants, right? So if I come to the occasion with all of that, but I either suppress it or I never give voice to it or I never get any expression of it in a partnership because I'm doing all this sex I'm tolerating because I'm doing it for all these other motivations, two things are going to happen. One, I'm going to lose contact with my sexual self. And usually, as somebody who works a lot with infidelity, I will see one of the root causes for infidelity can be I have cut off my sexual self in my primary partnership or partnerships so much that I go find myself outside. I go find myself somewhere else. Right? So that's one possible consequence of continually having sex that you're just tolerating. The other one, honestly, is just resentment. If I'm doing stuff I don't really like or want over time, I mean, yeah, okay, maybe I can do it once. I think we've all probably done it once, maybe a dozen times. I don't want to speak for y'all, but if you've been a sexually active person beyond procreation, you probably have had some sex that was motivated by trying to make somebody else feel something or not feel something. But if you do that as a regular habit, resentment is inevitable. And resentment, remember, AA says it best, resentment is drinking poison, waiting for the other person to die. Okay, is that the kind of sexy vibes we want? Not on this show, not on this show. So with tolerations, beware of tolerations. There's a real difference between willingness and toleration. Like, hey, I may be willing to be sexual with you because you're the driver and you're really initiating. And if I check in with myself and self-consent, I may not have a ton of desire right now, but I have some willingness. Okay, now I'm choosing to go into this encounter and see if I can come to live more and more, or if I can just give this gift. That's a different situation that I'm doing this and I'm tolerating it. Because tolerating over time, and I've seen it with long-term monogamous couples a lot, where somebody's been tolerating a lot of bad sex for them, then they get to a point after the kids are gone, usually, and things are pretty stable where we just quit. Like I want to resign from sex because they don't really want to resign from sex. Upon investigation, what they want to resign from is the sex they've been having, sometimes for decades. That's the price of long-term toleration in bed.
And that leads us to one of our next components of embodied consent is understanding purple sex. I'm going to drop an article in here that I wrote. But in short, we went to this workshop and this woman shared this example. And I think it's really, really brilliant. And it exemplifies exactly what Christopher's talking about. If Christopher likes red movies and I like blue movies, but we never tell each other that he likes red and I like blue, we are always going to watch purple movies. And neither of us is really going to be fully satisfied.
Yeah, nobody gets what they want. Nobody gets blue. Nobody wanted purple, but that's what we got. Oh.
Yeah. In real life, it's actually Marvel movies, superhero movies, and documentaries. And I have
So
learned to
we end
really
up watching
enjoy.
period dramas that neither one of us particularly like, right? So we
So
set it up to be sure that nobody gets what they want. I mean, oi, I mean, this is not sex that's going to endure over the long term. If it's a one night stand, that's one thing. But if it's sex in a long term partnership, oh, God help us.
yeah. So purple sex is when we're having sex that's maybe okay. Maybe we're getting a little bit of what we want. Maybe the other person's getting a little bit of what they want, but nobody's fully satisfied. And we'll talk about that in a minute when it comes back to the wheel of consent and giving and receiving in new ways. But understanding this idea that, like, oh, if I'm not really asking for what I want, and if I'm not making space and being mature and curious and playful enough to hear what my partner really wants, whose sex is this, right? Like, who is this really for?
And the fear is it's no one's. Right. So then the story I gave where one person's tolerating all the sex, now it's two people or more tolerating it.
Yeah,
Right. And so you see the problem that starts to build over time.
yeah. And my love, you had written this when we were brainstorming about how safety is really the starting point for this. Can you talk about that and how that relates to purple sex?
Yeah, yeah. So one of the things that is a really kind of counterintuitive idea is, and Andrea's alluding to it when she said, "Hey, I don't want to play with somebody who doesn't know their nose." Because then it starts to feel unsafe. So safety is part of the point. We've got to be safe in our own bodies. We've got to trust ourselves to say no. We've got to trust ourselves that we're in a situation where we won't get hurt. That things won't become violent if I say no. I mean, I've worked enough with trauma survivors and survivor sex, survivors where there have been times where people have to have sex just to get out of a very dangerous situation. That's a whole nother animal, right? So if you're in a fundamentally unsafe, that's an extreme example, a fundamentally unsafe situation like I'm describing, like a rape. Right. But now we're talking about degrees of safety, physical safety, emotional safety, sexual safety, right? Is my no gonna be honored? Right? Do I even know it myself? And then am I with a person who will honor it? Right. So these are things we played with somebody not too long ago who said, "Hey, I really don't like all this talking." And that's absolutely, they're right. Absolutely, they're right. And my response was, You're in the wrong house." Yeah, because for me to feel safety in myself and with a partner, I have to know where your no's are because then I can feel free to play and get my mind out of the way and let my body, my animal body, enjoy what we're doing up into that limit, right? But without that safety, there's going to be this perpetual, or there should be this perpetual concern. Is this okay? Is it not okay? Is this okay? And again, like Andrea is saying, if somebody says, "Oh, I don't know," or "I don't have any limits," well, I guarantee you they do. They may not be aware of them, but then you're going to find them in scene. You're going to find them in the act, right? And which raises all kinds of problems, but not the least of which is I can't be fully in my body if I'm always having to monitor for is this okay with them, much less is it okay with me.
Yeah. So safety, as he's saying, multi-layered, so much more than just physical safety. Physical safety is the bare fucking minimum. I need to know
Agreed.
that I'm not going to be harmed. But are you going to pout if I say no? Are you going to corner me in your house because you haven't finished yet? That's happened, right? Like, that's not safe. So there are so many degrees of safety. Are you going to be hurt if I say, hey, something is wrong, I need to adjust? Maybe. And then that's like another layer of practice of what Christopher would call distress tolerance, right? Like understanding that if Andrea gets hurt or is uncomfortable and I advocate for myself, that it's not actually because I'm mad at him. It's just, I just need to advocate for myself. And we dance with this all the time. Like, this is not a one and done conversation. Like, literally the other day he like leaned on me in this really playful way and I'm adjusting my hormones and my tits are super sore and like it just hurt and
Ah,
that's okay, and he
ah.
freaked out. He was so scared that he had hurt me and it was an accident and I know, and so we have to kind of constantly work through that.
It's a good example. So this is all relating back to sexual sophistication now. So hold this example in y'all's minds, right? So we're in the midst of being playful and physical, and then ow, something hurts her, and that is my worst fear. And so when I hurt her, because being in relationship is inevitable that ouches are going to happen, it sends a terror through my central channel that is potentially paralyzing and has been very paralyzing in a nervous system response before in my life with other partners and with Andrea too, where I get a freeze response. right? So, ow, I'm playing and boom, I hurt her. I know I've hurt her. I have that wiring in me. I have to be able to metabolize that, recognize that, articulate and narrate that to her as it's happening without making her responsible for co-regulating me. Right? Like if I hurt her, the worst, not the worst thing, one of the worst things I can do is make her then responsible for making me feel better after she's been hurt. So I've got to soothe myself in the moment while I'm narrating that to her while we're continuing to play. Okay, you see what we're talking about with sexual sophistication. And this has nothing to do with cunnilingus tips. Right? I mean, because that's what you're going to get from popular press, because that's what sells, right? Here are the top 10 things, the hot new things you can do in bed. There's a time and place for that, don't get me wrong. But none of that is the sexual sophistication you need to actually use those tools really well.
Hmm. There's a couple more things I want to say on this, and then we'll move on to our second pillar. But one, and this is another phrase from my darling friend Tara, is understanding your beautiful human needs, right? And this is a list from the Center for Nonviolent Communication. These are human needs in relationship. So as we start to think about, well, my animal body wants touch, or my animal body doesn't like this, it's just as important to understand your emotional needs. Your partner is not responsible for meeting all those needs, but it is your responsibility to know them. And for example, if there is a need that my partner can't fulfill, then it's my responsibility to find friends, community, family, a therapist who can help me meet that need. So I'm going to drop that worksheet in there. The other thing that I want you to explore, and these will come in the newsletter, so if you don't want to do them right now, that's fine. I'll send them out later, is something called a yes, no, maybe list. Because once you know your needs, once you learn to trust your animal body, once you learn to understand your boundaries and edges, then you get to play with what you want. What is fun? What sounds awesome? Do you want to have a threesome? Do you want to get fingered? Do you want to use butt plugs? Whatever it is, all of that is yours to explore. And adding on more activities, more stimulation, more people isn't really going to be as effective if you don't have these other parts in place. So I'm going to drop those in. You take a look at them today or in the newsletter if you want. The final thing I want to say about embodied consent, and this has informed so much of our relationship and so much of our work together. It is a practice called the Wheel of Consent by Dr. Betty Martin. The Wheel of Consent is weeks long workshops and trainings and all these different things. So there's a lot to explore. We teach about this sometimes in person, sometimes online, so keep an eye out for that. The one thing I want you to take away from the Wheel of Consent when we think about embodiment is that when you are like understanding who the touch is for, right? If I want to give Christopher a massage because I want to put my hands on his beautiful body, that touch is for me. He might enjoy it, but it's for me. If I want to give him a massage because I can tell his feet are sore and his body is sore after marathon training, that touch is for him. And understanding that who the touch is for, no matter what kind of touch you're doing, whether it's a blowjob or a foot massage or kissing, that could go in either direction. It could be for him, could be for me. That one piece of information is all I want you to take away from the Wheel of Consent right now, because it is one of the most profound things that, again, we learned this years ago and we still practice it all the time. Yes.
Let me just share my personal experience with this because my fear is we're going to jam it into a very packed seminar and we're not going to give this the emotional weight it deserves for you. So to tell you how it hit me when it was being taught to me, I had considered myself this generous lover who just wanted to give oral sex to women because I was so generous. And then the day-long seminar on who this touch was for made me think about these women that I had been touching in this way with this idea of myself that I was so generous. And if I was honest with myself, that touch, maybe every time up until that moment, was for me. Oh, it made me reconsider my entire sexual history up until that point. So, again, if this question doesn't have that kind of weight on you, you're not doing it wrong. But for those of you that do have that kind of weighty reaction like I did, I don't want you to miss it because it can really be a game changer in terms of your sexual sophistication.
Yeah. And this again, like is something we practice all the time. Like there are times when he goes down on me for me, and there are times that he goes down on me for him. And we often have a conversation, a brief conversation about that. Sometimes it just switches and I can tell, but usually we have a conversation about it. So all that to say, like this is important. If you have more questions about it, please let us know. But you can Google it, Dr. Betty Martin, Wheel of Consent. There's videos, trainings, all sorts of great stuff online. All right. So we are at our second pillar of sexual sophistication, co-creation. I'm going to move through this section a little bit quickly because, as per usual, we have a lot to say about everything. So I want to kind of speed this up a little bit. But basically, this idea of co-creation came out of sessions I was doing with couples where so many men, in my specific examples, this is not to say all men, were saying, well, I don't understand why it's so hard to get my wife on board, to get her turned on. I have the list. I did all of the things that I read about. Why isn't it working? Right? This idea that so many of us show up to sex and sexual play with a checklist. Okay, first we do this, then we do this, and then I'm going to do these 5 things I learned about how to give great head, and then that's going to work. Rather than showing up and being in the moment with the person or with yourself. What do you really want? Do you actually like oral sex? Because for like the first year of us dating, Christopher did not like oral sex. And we assume
Receiving,
collectively
to be clear.
that all men love blowjobs, right? Well, not all men love blowjobs. And so if you show up with a list of like, here's 5 ways to give a great blowjob, it's not going to work because there's no co-creation. Like we are not showing up in this together. I am not showing up curious about what he wants, who he is, what he likes. And if he, again, is not clear about saying yes or no, or trusting his animal body, or bucking that stereotype that like all men like blowjobs, I should like blowjobs, right? Then we're not actually going to have great sex, no matter how well I do on the task list that I got from whatever magazine or blog.
And without
So
conversation, then it's going to
yeah,
go poorly. And then she's going to internalize that I did it wrong. There's something wrong with me, or he doesn't like me.
yeah,
Right?
yeah, for
Ugh.
sure. So this idea of being sexually sophisticated is not actually just about skill. Skill's important. We'll get to that in a little bit. But it's actually about showing up and figuring out what you and I can co-create together. What type of experience do you want to have? How long do you want it to be? What would you like to do during this time? Do you want to go slow? Do you want it to be a quickie? Do you want to use toys? What? Do you want to have a cathartic experience? Do you want to have like a super hot, play where there's a bunch of impact and there's a bunch of orgasms, or do you want it to be like slow and mellow and sweet and candlelit? All of those are okay, and we get to create that together.
Because here's the bit Andrea's not saying. You're co-creating it if you're having partnered sex, whether you're intentional about it or not. She gave you a script that was pretty true. Now, we had talked about some of this, but imagine we hadn't. So she goes in, all believing all men love blowjobs. I've got these 5 new tips of how to do it. It's going to be amazing. I'm going to be a great lover. He's going to fall in love with me even more than he did, right? That's what she's coming into this with. And I'm going, oh God, please don't touch me. It makes me so nervous and insecure about my own body. And I don't even know how to feel my own body at this point. And if you're not having a good time sexually, because really that's what I'm programmed to do, because I really want acceptance from you. And I think I get it from your sexual pleasure. And that's my focus. But we don't say any of that to each other. And then we go have this sexual experience. First of all, it's going to be purple sex. Nobody's getting what they want. Second of all, people are going to leave hurt. She's going to leave thinking, I don't like her. And I'm going to leave thinking there's something wrong with me that I don't like this thing that all men like. Right. So this is where the rubber hits the road, right? I'd like it's co-created badly, unintentionally, or it can be co-created intentionally and hopefully better. Hopefully better. Maybe even great.
You told me about an article you read the other day in Substack about how this idea of like, oh, my partner wants me to initiate in a certain way and take care of things so that they can relax, and how that was actually being weaponized. I'd love to hear that because it was fascinating.
Yeah, I mean, and while we're here, we might as well plug it a little bit. So, part of the Sapient Access Ladder, we each have platforms that we give away content and tips and that sort of thing. And I just got on Substack and started writing for Substack as a free offering on the Sapient Access Ladder. So, in that, the feed gave me a very popular post from a self-identified coach for men about sex. And the thesis was, I think it was like 50 things. I couldn't get to 50. I got through like 5 tips. But it was basically the premise was fix your sex life, then fix your relationship, which is intriguing in a lot of ways. And this person who's not a therapist made the point that a lot of therapists believe that if you fix the relationship, sex follows. That part fits my experience. That's why I became a sex therapist, is I would do all my Gottman style relationship stuff, and sex didn't get any better, right? And so that's when I realized, like, oh yeah, those things are sometimes connected, but not always connected, right? So that part, I'm like, okay, I like this, I like this, I like this, and I'm reading, and I keep reading, and I'm like, oh. He's talking about responsive desire, which is a genuine concept, and we can talk about that if y'all want to. But he's weaponizing responsive desire, and he's saying, hey, people who, not all, he did say, not all, but a lot of people who are responsive desire are just trying to get you to do a bunch of things for them before they have sex with you. So they're basically using sex as an incentive to get their house cleaned. I'm like, what? What? So yeah, I mean, it's really something now, and as a therapist and a sex therapist, to see these concepts that are genuine concepts that are used and taught clinically to be weaponized in popular press and popular in social media posts and that sort of thing, and really twisted to where there's a little bit of truth to it, but then it's weaponized in a particular way. So just to put that out there, if y'all have any questions about these clinical terms or sexual health terms that are being bandied about by people who don't have the credentials to understand them fully, please ask us because we can help with that.
Yeah. The other part of this that we've kind of danced around is something that Dr. Ian Kerner calls sex scripts, which, if you think about it, you can have sex items, sex activities on a menu, right? Here's the list of things that Christopher and I may choose to do. That's kind of our menu. But a script is more like when first you start with this, and then you do this, and then you do this, and then you do that, and then we're done, right? And for most heterosexual couples, that has a very specific trajectory, which looks like kissing and touching, maybe some oral sex, and then penetrative sex, and then we're done. And that's fine. If you love that and that is good enough sex for you, that is fine. But when we don't talk about it, when we don't ask for anything that we really, really want, when we don't listen and trust our animal body, we are going to build up this habit of having sex that is not worth having. We are going to build by using the scripts over and over and over, especially if they're not what we really want. We're not going to have satisfying sex in the long term. Sex scripts, again, can be fine. And if we think about sex again as what are we co-creating? Can we add something to that? Can we try a new thing? Can we set the stage to like try a new experience or read something different and do it in a different way so that we can start to break up some of those scripts and start to really play together? So instead of like a screenplay that we're following, we're actually doing a little bit of improv, again, understanding our own self-consent, understanding each other's boundaries and edges and things like that. Babe, anything else you want to know about that?
Yeah, I mean, just so y'all know, in a typical sex therapy, your sex therapist is going to ask you for that script because nobody comes to therapy, sex therapy or otherwise, to brag about how great things are going. So when people come in with a complaint about their sex life, that's one of the things we're going to want to know right off the bat because we're going to want to know, how do you go about it? How did you come to this decision? And usually the answer is, well, this is just what we do. This is just what everybody does, right? Not necessarily. Not
Yeah.
necessarily.
Yeah. I think Dan Savage said it best, as he often does, is that, as queer folks, we have to really talk about, well, what do we want? What do you like? What do you want to do? And straight folks, there's like this kind of cultural script that like the sexual script, like I was just mentioning, but also the relational script. first we do this, then we do this, then we do this. Christopher just wrote an awesome post on his Substack about like boarding trains and how relationship pathways can be like subway maps and how you can follow one train, but there are lots of other routes that you might want to take. I dropped the Substack links into the chat also. Um, Babe, I want to kind of move through this section quickly, but I'd love for you to talk about the learning curve quadrants and how that overlays with sexual sophistication and like the conscious uncompetent
So
conscious.
yeah, I got you.
Yeah.
I got you. So one of the paradoxes that we're introducing to you today, remember your job is to take this concept and apply it to your life and your sex life, is this idea that we want you to be in your animal body. Said another way, that we want to get your head out of the way so the body knows what it wants. There's a paradox here. Because what if I'm learning something new? What if my partner, Andrea, says to me one day, "Hey, don't kiss me like that. It's kind of dumb." And I go, this really happened. This isn't a hypothetical. And I go, oh shit. So all of a sudden, I've got to come out of my animal body. I've got to get my head involved because I really got to start paying attention to how my tongue is moving, how open is my mouth. Well, all of a sudden, I'm in my head and I'm not in my body. So if you map the learning curve on top of sex, basically the learning curve has four quadrants. We are unconsciously incompetent. We don't know what we don't know. This is bliss. When people say ignorance is bliss, I don't know I don't know I'm making a mistake. I don't know what I don't know. Then somebody comes along who you love and says, "You're kissing me, dumb." And then I go, "Ow." Okay, now I'm consciously incompetent. I am like, "Ow, oh, oh, I want to be better at this." Okay, so now I'm out of my animal body, but stick with it, Christopher, because you're then gonna figure out how she would prefer to be kissed. You're gonna kiss her that way. You're gonna become stage three, consciously competent. Consciously competent, right? I'm more skillful, but I have to think about it and keep my mind on it to stay skillful. Hang in there, Christopher, because then after you practice that enough, you're going to become unconsciously competent at kissing her the way she wants to be kissed. And now I can go back fully to getting my head out of the way and getting my body involved. So as you're adding these skills, particularly in the fourth quadrant, give yourself permission to let your head be involved because it's a process, right? Like one of the great metaphors from a teacher that we both have mixed feelings about is that sex is art. Not every piece is a masterpiece. There are a lot of mistakes. And that's a tough one for me emotionally. Like, because I want everyone to be a masterpiece. And if it don't, I think it's a failure. Oh, God, I feel bad. Okay, now remember, this is stuff I have to have going on in me, have to recognize it, have to manage it, have to narrate it back to Andrea, then we have to work with it. Okay, this is why being sexually sophisticated is art. Is art. And please don't expect yourself to be a virtuoso every single time. Every single time. So yeah, the learning curve is helpful here. Let your head get involved when you're learning new skills. Keep practicing them through that discomfort and then get unconsciously competent. Then get your head out of the way and the body will know.
Yes, thank you. He was really, really high. That was why he started kissing dumb. And
It's
so
really hard to get your head involved when you're really high. No, but I'm doing it. I'm doing it.
we've
Don't be dumb.
modulated
Don't be dumb. Don't be
cannabis
dumb.
sometimes to
Don't be
bring this
dumb.
into practice. Um, Sorry, something just got weird with my windows. Okay, so that segues us into our third pillar of sexual sophistication, which is mindful presence. Again, the whole theme of this whole thing is mindful sex. This is woven in throughout so much of what we've already been talking about, right? So sex isn't just something that you do. Like I'm just not like going in to like bang somebody and be done. Like that's not how I have sex anymore. That's not who I want to have sex with in my life anymore. Sex is really an expression of who you are. It's who you are as a person, it's who you are as a lover, but it's also how you want to show up in the world. Are you kind? Are you present? Are you playful? Are you curious? Right? Like these are all great skills and characteristics to have, and they're especially important in bed. And one of the things that's most important is presence. Presence being, are you here right now in this moment? Or are you running through a to-do list in your brain? Are you writing your grocery list, which I used to do during sex? Are you thinking about that email that you forgot to send at work? Are you thinking about somebody else and really distracted because you have a hot coworker that you're suddenly obsessed with? Learning how to be present starts with yourself, right? And you can choose a zillion different pathways into mindfulness, into presence. It might be meditation, it might be dance, it might be breath work, it might be body work, it might be yoga. I have a 25-year yoga practice that is my primary embodiment practice. And it took me about 10 to 15 years to realize it's actually about self and stillness and not just about my booty. So understanding that Tai Chi, any sort of martial art, right? There's so many different ways to get into mindful presence with yourself and then to meet somebody else who is mindfully present in their own body is so powerful. When you are present with yourself, that's embodiment. And I can feel my breath, I can feel my body, I can feel my sex, I can feel all the different things happening in me, my nervousness, my excitement, my curiosity, playfulness, whatever. When you're tuned into the other person. Oh, they seem a little bit nervous. They seem a little bit high energy, right? I am tuned in to where my partner is at in any given moment, right? And this too takes practice. And I think that four-part quadrant that Christopher just mentioned is a great way, great reminder in this moment. Like this is a skill, this is a practice. You are not going to suddenly show up present because what I don't want you to do is go to your next play date or, uh, I don't know what I'm trying to say, your next date or whatever. And next time you're in bed with somebody and just be like, I am present. I'm here. I'm right here. No, no, no. That's fucking weird. Like, don't be a rock. Like, be present with what's going on. And one of the things I have learned through Tantra, through sacred sexuality, through presence, through being with my animal body, is that sometimes sex is a portal for all the other stuff that we don't normally feel. So, like I was saying earlier, it would be great if we could all be really clear about what we want and who we are, and that I need touch and intimacy, but I'm not just accessing that through sex. But sometimes we may not know right away. And sometimes we start to fool around and we end up just having conversations for an hour. Sometimes we start to fool around and I end up crying. Sometimes we start fooling around and something else emerges entirely different than what either of us is expected. So it's being alive with what is in the moment. It's being alive with what's in you, being alive with what's in your partner, and being alive, being connected to what you're co-creating together in that moment. Maybe when you come together, and I've seen this so many times when we teach our tantric date night, I've experienced it with you in tantra classes, where as soon as we slow down and start breathing together and start looking at each other, I'm sobbing because I feel so close and so connected. And I didn't realize I had felt disconnected, right? So it's like the sex itself can be the portal. And the more we step through that portal, the more we know ourselves so we can continually show up for ourselves.
It's worth saying at this point to everyone, I, as a cisgendered man, want to say to my dudes out there, but it's not exclusive to dudes. One of the big things that created that safety, remember we call back to safety for Andrea, and she's here so she can elaborate on this if I get it wrong, which is great. But my experience of her is one of the things that really helped establish safety is me telling her repeatedly, especially early in our relationship, that my arousal did not obligate her to do something with it, that my arousal was my own. And it's mine to manage or do with whatever it is I need to, whatever I need to do with it. And so the reason I say that at this point is because let's say we're in a scene like Andrea is talking about, and I think sex is going to go one way, and it is going to follow that old Masters and Johnson sort of typical, which is really outdated now, just FYI for a little pro tip. But then we're going to start with, desire, then we're going to build to arousal, then we're going to have a plateau period, then, we're going to have an orgasm, then we're going to have a refractory period, right? This very sort of male physiology model of sex from the 50s and 60s that we all thought was the be all and end all at the time. It's not. It's not. But, you know, let's say I think it's going to go that way. And then something comes up during sex, it's completely unexpected that we have to hold the brakes. You know, we have to pull the brakes rather. Well, if I'm not good at mastering my own arousal and being responsible for it, I can be a real asshole in that situation potentially. Right? So that's where it's like I've really got to be responsible for my own desire and arousal and be able to master the track of that and then narrate that back to my partner when it makes sense to narrate. But I am taking responsibility for what's happening in my own body. It's not hers, it's mine. So if you haven't figured it out yet, I'm a differentiation-based therapist. I know a lot about connection, but the way I work is through differentiation. We're each responsible for our own whole selves. Thank you very much. Right? So that part is really, really valuable here because again, you get into these artful situations and surprises will come. Surprises will come. Sam?
Thank you. I've moved offices, and so now I'm directly above Christopher, and so I can hear him. So I'm trying to mute myself in between, and sometimes I forget. Anything else you want to say about presence? Because I want to jump into sexual tools where we talk a little bit about like ejaculation control and things like that. But is there anything else you want to say about presencing? Okay, awesome. So the fourth pillar of sexual sophistication are the sexual tools. Like I said, what I mentioned earlier, which is all the stuff that you can practice and learn and buy that can help improve the sex that you're having. Once you have these other pillars in place, the co-creation, the embodied consent, the self-consent, the presence, all of that. So our first kind of sexual tool is a what we call the erotic toolkit. And this is very broad. I have a bunch of content around this on my Patreon, which is like what's in your erotic toolkit. Some of the things that are in our erotic toolkit include sex toys, lots of different kinds of lube. He likes silicone lube. I like oil-based lube. It could be like arousal enhancements, right? Like I use a CBD cream on my pussy called Vela that works amazing. It could also be like sexual tools like O-nuts or penis sleeves that help increase or kind of decrease the size of your penis so that it can make it more comfortable for penetration. It might be things like substances, like maybe you like a glass of wine. We prefer cannabis. Other substances that you may want to enjoy, whether that's herbs or just a cup of coffee, or my favorite little supplement is this stuff called sex magic, right? It's like this drink that you make. Those are all different things in our toolkit, and we have drawers full of toys and sensation tools and all sorts of things. Like build your toolkit. Your toolkit can be as unique as you are. It can be penetrative toys, it can be vibrating toys, it could be all the different lubes in the world so you can please all the different lovers. It could be condoms, it could be all sorts of stuff.
It can be language. It can be
Uh-huh.
language, right?
Language is number four. So why don't you jump into that? The
Yeah,
language and
well, I
communication.
just first of all, the academic in me feels like it's important to say, Andrea and I have no financial disclosures, no financial conflicts to disclose. So the products that we talk about, we do not have endorsements with them. These are things that we use in our own lives that work well for us. So please take it in that light. We get no financial compensation for repping anybody, but not every sex tool is something that you have to go pay money for. It can be something where you start to learn that narrate skill, right? This is the first step in dirty talk. How do I narrate that skill about what I'm feeling for you and what I want for you, what I want from you, right? Now I'm articulating, we were talking all this time about, hey, what are limits and boundaries and all this kind of stuff. Well, you can also make that consent conversation a lot more sexy, y'all. Right. So this idea that consent is something we do ahead of time, we sign all the NDAs and we do everything in advance. Okay, that happens sometimes. That happens sometimes. Don't get me wrong. We all do our yes, no, maybe lists and we trade them and that sort of stuff. But once I've got the list, now I can start saying, now would you like this? I think the other day I said, hey, to Andrea in the midst of something, would a cock in your mouth make this better or worse? Uh-huh. And see what happens? Right? And so that's a consent question,
I
but
was
it's
sobbing on the living room floor.
right? I mean, so this is where you can use language as an erotic toolkit. This isn't stuff you've always got to go out and buy.
I recently did a series on my Patreon of 12 days of orgasmic miracles instead of like 12 days of Christmas. And one of the ones I did was on dirty talk. And one of my favorite things is from Dan Savage, where he talks about like if you're new to dirty talk or talking sexy, like talk about what you're going to do, talk about what you're doing, talk about what you did. Like that's basically what we do in workshops, right? Like here's what you're going to learn. We're going to talk about what you're learning it, and then now we're going to review it. So that you can do follow that same for dirty talk. And one of my other favorite tips you actually learned in a workshop, which was start practicing talking dirty talk by like talking to things like as you're cutting vegetables, like, oh, you filthy little zucchini. You deserve to be chopped up and diced, like that kind of stuff, just so you just get to sense the silliness and the
I'm gonna
playfulness
dice
of
you
it.
slow and sharp. I don't know. No, you got to work on it. Not everything's a masterwork, y'all.
And if you are going to veer into dirty talk, just be sure that the other person wants to hear it and also ask them what their flavor is. Like, don't call somebody a dirty slut if they want to be called your sweet baby girl, or like, don't call somebody big daddy if they actually want to be like your sweet little kitten. Like, we just got to have a range. We all have a range in us, and some of us have more harder
Yeah,
boundaries
I've learned that
around
some
that.
people take the difference between slut and whore very, very differently. Yeah, I mean, and again, that's where you get into this co-creation thing, right? Whether you talk about it or not, you're gonna co-create it. So there
Yeah.
are some landmines you can avoid. Some of them you're gonna find in the middle of it, and that's where you gotta be able to be really good at sort of self-soothing and staying
Yeah.
engaged and being able to have difficult conversations or difficult experiences while you're having a lot of feelings.
The other part of this is something that I call the erotic mosaic. And I have more content on this as well. But the erotic mosaic, the erotic toolkit is all of the things that you play with and add sensation or add, vibration or whatever. The erotic mosaic is all the things that you are, right? So think about like like all of we think of sexuality, right? Gay or straight, like as on a spectrum. Sure. We can think of gender expression as on a spectrum, right? Like hyper feminine, hyper masculine, non-binary, kind of in the middle, and a bunch of different expressions in between. But there's also spontaneous and responsive. How do you respond to sexual stimuli? What do you need to get turned on? There's also people that need sex to feel connected and people that need connection in order to want sex. That's also a spectrum. And as we start to understand more and more about ourselves as sexual beings, just in and of ourselves, not exactly who we sleep with or what we want, but like how we are wired, then we start to get what I call this like mosaic, right? And this is inspired, of course, by Jaya's work around the erotic blueprints, where she has 5 blueprints, which is you are sensual, sexual, energetic, kinky, or shapeshifter. This could also be, in kink or BDSM speak, you're dominant or submissive. Well, some people like us are right in the middle and we're kind of switchy, and we could be both, right? So if we take all of these different aspects of who I am, I'm bisexual, I'm switchy, I'm responsive, I'm, super femme in my gender presentation. And then there's also all this other stuff that I like sexually. So there's really this like huge range of who we are. And so often we think about like, oh, somebody's low libido or somebody's high libido, but like high or low in relation to what? Vanilla or kinky in relation to who, right? Like everybody is on a spectrum, and there is nothing wrong with exactly where you are on all of those different spectrums. And that makes up your unique erotic mosaic.
So here's a minute for all of you. Remember, we're going to give you a concept. Your job is to try to figure out how it applies to you. So, what I want you to do, and I'm going to watch the clock here. So, I'm going to take 2 minutes after I get done talking. I'm going to give you 2 minutes to think about yourselves from 3 different perspectives. One is identity. This is who I am. This is how I understand myself. Two, behavior. These are things I can do. They may not be identity, but they're things I can do sexually or otherwise, right? Like I can make a meal, but my identity is not a cook or a chef, right? So there's an example. Three, and this is the important part that Andrea is giving you right now. What labels would I use to tell other people about myself, right? So I want to take now, in Pacific time is 12:13. I want you to think about your identity, who am I, versus the things I do. And how would I use a label, a word, a phrase to tell that to a partner? Take 120 seconds.
Can you give an example of it when we're done with the 2 minutes so that you
Yep.
can share? Okay, great.
I will share my own personal one.
Great. I think that sounds great.
You got about 60 seconds to go. Okay, I'm going to give you my identity, behavior, and labels. Okay. So, my identity, as I think of myself, hi, my name is Christopher. My diagnosis today is major depressive disorder in remission. It used to be, years and years ago, major depressive disorder recurrent, generalized anxiety disorder, alcohol abuse, and dependent personality disorder. Today, my only identity is major depressive disorder in remission. I'm a cisgendered white man who checks every power box of US culture. And I think if I hadn't, I probably wouldn't have survived. See all those mental illnesses that I used to qualify for. I am polyamorous, and I am Andrea's husband. That is my identity, right? My behavior, I'm a psychotherapist. I do, psychotherapy things. I can have sex with other people who aren't Andrea or myself. I can do those things in terms of behavior, right? That's not really part of my identity. So there's a little nuance here, y'all, right? So I identify as polyamorous, meaning I can love more than one person at a time. But my sexual behavior really isn't connected to that identity. I can do it, but I don't identify myself as sort of this, you know, a lot of partners is a big novelty turn on for me. I can do it, but it's not a huge part of my identity. The labels I would give people, I would say, hey, I'm a white man of a certain age, and you know what I discovered about myself is that I can love more than one person at a time. And that's kind of weird, right? It's kind of against sort of culture, right? One of the things that ethical non-monogamous folks know is that we're in a minority group, right? So when I want to tell people about that, I'll use the term ethical non-monogamous. I usually will shy away from polyamory because polyamory has that confusion, right? It's my identity, it's the way my heart works, but it's not necessarily part of my sexual expression or my sexual needs, right? So there are some of my labels. Anyway, I hope you all were able to come up with something. Andrea, you can do with this what you want. I kind of added the exercise at the minute, so I'll leave it to you to see how you want to use this, or if you want to leave it here and move on.
I think it's a good example. And somebody just dropped into the chat a notation that was really interesting. I was at an E&M conference, and one of the speakers introduced the idea of viewing E&M or poly as a relationship strategy over an identity, which is really interesting.
So on that,
Some,
so this is a perfect illustration.
yeah,
Some people will identify with it. So when I think of identity, It's like coming home. It's like,
Mm,
oh, okay, this explains myself to myself. Ha. There are lots of people who engage in E&M and polyamory who do not have that identity, but they are those of us for whom this explains how I can love more than one person at a time and not be bad.
hmm.
Right? So there absolutely people can do E&M and poly as behavior, but not identity. And there are people for whom it is identity. Right? So I mean that's where each person in that audience is going to have a different vibe on that.
Yeah. And I can think about many lesbians that I know who also sometimes like having sex with men. But the lesbian identity is very important to them because of community, because of how they see themselves, because of how they want to structure a family. But also, like one of my friends was like, I had sex with a dude. It was kind of awesome. I'm like, yeah, great. So there you go.
Yeah.
That's another version of identity versus
Yeah,
behavior.
a clitoris or a butthole for that matter has nerve endings,
Doesn't
not
have an identity.
not identity. Right? I mean, so here we're starting to play with it. It's like, oh, my body can enjoy this thing, but I can't tell you how many times I get this, y'all. Does this make me gay?
Mhm.
Well, this is a lot of therapy, right? Of like, okay, does this make you gay? Right? I mean, like I can't tell you, but you could tell me. Right? So now we try to suss out the difference between behavior and identity. And then what's the label I use to explain this to people? One of my mentors gives the label as, I think she gives the label as polyamorous, but really her identity is pansexual. But that's how she understands herself. But rather than try to explain what pansexuality is, I'm going to use the label of the day to just try to communicate to somebody, what they need to know about me. Right. So there's another example of the difference, right? So my identity and how I explain it to you or to a new partner, those can be different. Those can be different because the label is what we're trying to get people to know about us that they need to know so that we can have a good sexual experience or romantic experience or friendship experience or business experience together.
Yeah. The final thing in our sexual tools skill set is really understanding that sex is a practice. And there are so many multiple ways that you can explore a range of sexual activities. Maybe you are more drawn to kinky stuff under the BDSM umbrella. Maybe you really want to be tied up or tie people up. Maybe you really want to spank people or be spanked. That is an entirely different kind of realm of sexual practice that you may want to explore as part of your sexual toolkit. There's sacred sexuality and tantra, where we focus on breath, connection, spirituality, and we help bring the sacred into our sexual play. There's all sorts of different ways that you can explore your sexuality, your innate sensuality, your innate sexuality totally solo without a partner. That could be breathwork practices. That could be mindful erotic practices. That could be sexual meditation. It could be jade egg or crystal wand practices if you have a pussy. It could be exploring just all sorts of different types of ethical porn where you're learning about how other people like to have sex. Maybe you want to explore non-monogamy. And so maybe you start going down the route of figuring out what it might be like to have a threesome with your current partner or what it would be like to go to a sex party. So all that to say, like there are literally thousands of different things that you can do with your sex life. And this is where a lot of our work comes in when we talk about workshops, when we talk about sessions, when we talk about intensives. This is where we get to offer these types of practices to people, whether it's an ecstatic breath work or a guided pussy massage or a mindful erotic practice for a person with a penis or a wheel of consent, whatever it might be. These are the types of things that we can help you explore as you learn to understand yourself
And
sexually.
Andrea's just given you a beautiful list of sexual behaviors and practices that you can try and you can add to your skill set on that learning curve. And along the way, you may find some identity.
Mm-hmm.
right? So for Andrea, and I'll speak for you a little bit, and you can elaborate if you want, she is a senior Tantra practitioner, but now identifies as a Tantrika. So, right? So I don't really identify as a Tantrika. Is that gendered,
Yeah.
Andrea? Is there a male
No,
version of Tantrika, or is that genderless?
I think it's genderless.
But I can do tantra behavior and practices, tantric behaviors and practices. So again, try all the behaviors, add the skills. You're also going to find some limits along the way and some boundaries along the way. This is kind of the fuck around and find out part of how do I start to know myself as an erotic being.
That's what I was just gonna say. We went to this workshop one time, and this woman was basically like, "Look, if you want to figure out who you are sexually, like FAFO." And we were like, "What?" And she was like, "Fuck around and find out. Maybe you don't know if you like being spanked. So you know what? Go to a dungeon, find a dom, ask your partner, hey, can we try this? I have this idea. Let's watch some instructional videos so we don't hurt ourselves. And let's do a spanking workshop for 20 minutes and let's just see how it goes." I thought I really liked spanking. Turns out I do not, which is a bummer, but that's how we are. So you can go to a tantra workshop and start to explore that with yourself or with your beloved and be like, "Ooh, I don't know if this is for me." Or instead, totally fall in love with the love of your life and blast your whole life open in order to explore the path of sacred sexuality. There's a whole bunch of stuff that can happen along the way. So all that to say, that is the conclusion of our relationship, our four pillars. We're done. That is the
I
end
I mean, this is how
of
you're
our
going to tell
workshop.
me. This is how you're going to tell me in front of everybody? Okay, okay.
This is
I'm
the
I'm
end.
self-soothing. I'm self-soothing. I'm regulating. I'm narrating what's inside. I'm
Because I was scrolling at the same time. This is the end of our workshop. Thank you very much for joining us. Christopher and I are going to have a long conversation after this. Just as a reminder, the four pillars of sexual sophistication I want to remind you of and leave you with today is embodied consent. How are you listening to and trusting the animal body, trusting your instincts, trusting your gut, trusting your intention, trusting your intuition. The second pillar is the co-creation. What are we showing up to co-create with one another? And what are we showing up to create for ourselves if it's a solo pleasure practice? The third one is mindful presence. How are you showing up with your breath, with your body, and how can you attune to the other and be present with what's happening in them? The fourth pillar is all the sexual tools that we mentioned. If you have questions about any of them, most likely I have a piece of content around it. But you can also message us. Somebody wrote in the chat, they asked about Vela, so the link for Vela is in there. And as a reminder, there are lots of different ways to work with us. And on our access ladder, this workshop is the top of it because it gets you access to us for free once a month. You can also find us on Substack, on Patreon, on socials. That's where you can get all sorts of great stuff. You will also all be dropped onto my newsletter. You'll get 3 newsletters from me. You can opt out if you want. You'll get the replay, some additional resources, and some embodiment practices to take away with you. If you want to work with us more deeply, there are a few ways to do that. We both offer sessions. Christopher is now licensed in California, so he has Colorado, Texas, and California licensure for psychotherapy and sex therapy. I'm a coach, so I can work with anybody around the world. And I offer individual and couple sessions. I offer Tantra mini sessions, so you can dive into this beautiful body of work in a short period of time. And we also do workshops, classes, and soon group coaching containers for all of our people. Christopher, anything you want to add?
Nope, I'm just adding in to the chat the four pillars. Thank you all so much for spending part of your Saturday with us. You're amazing. It's always fun to be with you, Andrea. Fabulous work.
All right, so we are going to stop our recording. Thank you. Thank you.